There was a particular device developed by AIMS. It's called SOHUM. So this is a device by which you can actually do hearing assessment of newborns. If a newborn is not tested for hearing, then he or she would have delayed milestones. And if you had to test a newborn, you would actually have to take the baby to a soundproof room. So this is a device which is portable. We did a health technology assessment for this particular device and we found that it was quite cost effective. This is an example how technologies can be adopted.
Hello and welcome to ICMR Radio, where we unpack health research in India. Ever wondered how a new medical treatment or technology finds its way into hospitals? Or how do policymakers and doctors decide that a particular technology is actually worth investing in? Well, that's where health technology assessment, or HTA, comes in. Think of it really as the systematic use of evidence to inform key healthcare decisions. In fact, in India, it is the Department of Health Research that is leading this effort, making healthcare more affordable, accessible, and equitable for millions. If you haven't guessed it, yes, HTA is the topic of our conversation here on ICMR Radio. My name is Anubha Bhonsle, and joining us today is a very prolific guest. I'm being joined by Anu Nagar. She is the Joint Secretary in the Department of Health Research, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in the Government of India, and really a key figure in this entire HTA landscape. Thank you very much for sparing this time to be here with us on this podcast, ma'am.
Thank you, Anubha. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
How should we understand the scope, the purpose, and really the value of HTA?
So the Department of Health Research, as the name implies, is responsible for health research in the country, which gives services in the form of healthcare products and services. So what we are doing there is that, first of all, we are working on the health infrastructure. We want that the entire country should have an environment which is feasible for health research. So we are working with the medical colleges and other organizations. We have schemes like viral research and diagnostic labs, which were the backbone for COVID testing during the COVID pandemic. We have the multidisciplinary research units in the medical colleges. We have about 27 ICMR institutes. So that is the infrastructure that we are talking about. And then we are working on the human resource capacity. We have fellowships to about 3,000 people. We give health research fellowships. When we talk about research, then comes the governance and policy. We are also responsible for that. ICMR, as you know, is the main body responsible for evidence generation. We have ICMR with its intramural and extramural programs working on it. So when you have everything ready, you have an evidence, it has to be used somewhere. So for that, we have two verticals in DHR. The first one is Center for Guidelines, wherein we are working for having evidence-based world-class guidelines, and we are already working on 4 of them. And then finally is the health technology, where the products that are developed through research or the technologies that are developed through research, how do they find their way into programs, the health programs? So that is where health technology assessment comes in. The concept of HTA came with, it's an old concept. We have about 60 countries already practicing HTA. But in India, it came with the health policy of 2017.
Okay.
So with that, we started a small pilot program in Department of Health Research. We then evolved into a scheme in the department, and in May 2023, a full-fledged office of HTA was formed. It's called Health Technology Assessment in India.
I noticed how you sort of used evidence-informed decision-making, evidence-informed support to policymakers to come to these key healthcare decisions. I mean, speak to us. I know you've sort of given us the building blocks in terms of infrastructure, in terms of capacity building, but what would be the components for you to undertake a health HTA assessment for, let's say, emerging technology or new innovations? What would you be assessing them on, so to speak?
First, let me tell you the structure of HTA in India. So we have about 18 resource centers and 6 hubs Some of them specialized in specific areas, for example, say cancer and TB. So these are our resource centers which actually undertake the health technology assessment. They are appraised and guided by 2 technical appraisal committees. When they approve that particular topic, then there is a board at the top which actually gives a go-ahead. And once a go-ahead is given, we make policy briefs and send them to all state governments and the central government for implementation. But then which technologies do we take? That was your question. So for that, we have a prioritization committee. Earlier we used to get topics only from the state and central governments. That is how we started because we were a small organization. But now we have a topic submission portal wherein any innovator can come and submit the topic. Since HTA is something new and not many people know about it, so we are having lots of capacity building, sensitization workshops in the state governments with the state health program, also with the innovators, also at IITs, which is the hub of innovation, as you already know. We are working with insurance agencies and all the stakeholders of HTA, also the procurement agencies in the state government.
This is to attract more submissions.
Yes, so that everybody knows and values what HTA is, because HTA is something where the clinical evidence and cost effectiveness are both combined together to give an assessment as to whether that product can be taken in a program or not. So that is for the government programs. So we have certain thresholds wherein we say that yes, this particular technology can be taken up by a public program. But we also have thresholds wherein we say that individual hospitals, insurance agencies can also take up these projects.
Can you give us a sense or a sample of what are the kind of submissions that come in from this gamut of innovation universe?
So before that, I'd like to tell you what are the applications of HTA. That would make this more clear. So currently we are using HTA for 4 purposes in the country. The first one is procurement and pricing. The second one is introduction of new technologies in our programs, in our health programs. The third one is support to ongoing health programs.
Okay.
And the fourth is health benefit packages.
Okay.
So, coming back to the technologies and to give you an example, so when the Prime Minister of our country wanted sickle cell screening for the entire tribal population, it meant that 7 crore people in the country had to be screened for sickle cell. At that time, we were looking for a technology, a point of care test, because it's not possible for all of them to come to a lab and get tested. It's a Herculean job. So we were looking for a point of care device or a technology wherein we could actually go to the people and get it tested. At that time in the country, unfortunately, there were none of the indigenous developers. So we had 2 foreign companies and they said that yes, we'll give you this test, but it will be more than rupees 350 per test.
Okay.
So more than 350 multiplied by 7 crores is a big number. So the health department, they asked us to do an HT. So we were only too happy to do that. And we said that at rupees 100, this would be cost effective.
Okay.
So this was the price that was conveyed by the National Health Mission to all the states. This actually, and before that also, the company, since we gave a figure of rupees 100, the company said, yes, we'll supply it at 150. So a single assessment, reduced the price from over 350 to 150. That is less than 50%. But when the tenders came, the first tender came for rupees 82. And today, this is present on the GEM at rupees 25.
Wow.
So this is a huge saving, and this is how people can use, the governments can use, and the organizations can use HTA for pricing and procurement.
So when we spoke about the parameters, you talked about effectiveness and cost. Are these the 2 parameters on which health tech assessment is done?
Yes, the clinical effectiveness and the cost effectiveness. We also talk about social considerations, the ethical considerations, the environment considerations. But primarily, this is all evolving. But primarily today, there are 2 factors that we are focusing on: the clinical and the cost effectiveness.
Cost effective.
Yes.
I ask this as a layperson because in a country like ours, where the need is so expansive, and you have limited health budgets to undertake so many, so many concerns. I'm wondering what used to happen before something like a health tech assessment was in place, because this almost seems like a must-do.
So earlier what was happening is that there was a group of experts that would sit together and they would come to a consensus based on some evidence, of course, based on some experience, of course. But HTA is a more robust process,
It's more
of
systematic.
it's of gathering evidence, of assessing it through models. So that gives you a greater certainty of evidence.
And gives you greater robustness to even stick by the decisions. Do you want to tell us about the other two examples?
The other three applications. So I talked about the pricing part. The second is, how do we have new technologies come into our health programs in the country? So my favorite example, which I share with everybody, and I really liked it, was that there was a particular device developed by AIMS. It's called Soham. There are 3 more companies which have started producing it now. So this is a device by which you can actually do hearing assessment of newborns. If a newborn is not tested for hearing, then he or she would have delayed milestones, and that's a big problem. Many times they would remain like that. And if you had to test a newborn, you would actually have to take the baby to a soundproof room. So this is a device which is portable, which can actually be taken to doorstep, and there the child can be tested. So we did a health technology assessment for this particular device, and we found that it was quite cost effective. And today there are 5 states which have actually procured it for their child programs.
Fantastic.
So this is an example of how technologies can be adopted. The third is, how do you support the ongoing programs which are very important? So one of the program is is TB elimination.
Yes.
We all know that it is so important for us to eliminate TB. And this year, we have helped the Central TB Division with 3 technologies. First one is SciTB, which is a test for testing latent TB. And we helped them fix a price for that. The manufacturer was asking for 304. Through our cost threshold assessment, we quoted a price, and they could procure it at rupees 199. And then we also helped them with a new regime for the multi-drug resistant TB, which is called BPAL and BPAL-M. We also helped them uptake an AI device for reading of chest X-rays.
Okay.
So this was also recommended by HTA studies, and it has been incorporated in the program. So this is how we are helping the program. And the third one is health benefit packages.
Okay.
So for this, our biggest client is PMJ, which is the biggest health assurance scheme in the world. So what we are helping them is revise and rationalize their health benefit packages. And we've been able to help them rationalize about 850 of them. So these are the 4 applications of HTA that we are using currently in the country.
And such widespread and diverse uses. Just to clarify, an HTA assessment is, as I can see, crisscrossing devices, packages, insurance schemes, etc.
Yeah. So you can do HTA for all the health technologies. And when I say health technologies, I mean devices, diagnostics, drugs, procedures, guidelines, almost everything that can qualify. Even the AI-based technologies or softwares, they all qualify as health technologies.
How do you, I think you've hinted about it in terms of submissions, etc., but how do you as a department go about deciding which one to focus on or which one is priority?
So we have defined the criteria. We have a limited budget, right? So we can't be assessing everything that comes to us. So there are criteria based on which there is a topic prioritization committee, which has experts, which actually decides on the basis of disease burden, the kind of benefit that the technology would give, the kind of lives the technology would save, what kind of impact would it make. So they have these criteria, they give some kind of weightages to all of them. And based upon that, we decide that, okay, these are the technologies which we are going to consider this year for
work on it.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I can completely sort of see how this sort of backroom work, if I can call it, is really powering affordable healthcare for millions. I know HTA is sort of integrated with Ayushman Bharat. How does that aspect work out?
Yeah, with Ayushman Bharat, like I talked to you about PMJ, we are working on the health benefit packages. We help them rationalize them. One of the examples how we really help them out, apart from the health benefit packages, is that we also guide them regarding in a particular package, what is the drug which would be more cost effective and clinically effective, and how do you go about designing your package. So that is also one aspect that we give recommendations on.
Can I understand what happens once you give a recommendation? So it's on the table of policymakers?
Yeah, it's present before them as an evidence. Okay, so based upon their requirement, they utilize our evidence in use.
What about HTA assessment or recommendations and private sector?
We've been trying to talk to insurance agencies. And as you see, we have a very big insurance market now in the country.
That's right.
And more and more of us are now buying policies, and we are all concerned about when it comes to reimbursement. So we are also now sensitizing them, telling them which technologies are cost effective, how should their cost benefit packages look like. We are trying to kind of take them into confidence, and we are trying to sell the concept of HTA to them, and we've been pretty successful. There has been a good interest from them. Apart from that, the private sector is actually the industry who is actually manufacturing all these technologies. When they start developing of the product, we are trying to tell them, see, there is a concept of HTA, and you need to kind of keep these into factor. You need to publish your findings, so that they find a way into our assessments. So we're trying to kind of sensitize them on the use of HTA. And this is also helping them develop frugal, cost-effective technologies.
Also perhaps technologies that are need of the hour and that have a greater burden on public health. So we've spoken about policymakers, we've spoken about the private sector. Is there something about the work that you do that also benefits patients/consumers, etc.? Is there a connective tissue there?
Definitely. We are also trying that in our committees, in our stakeholder analysis, and in our stakeholder meetings, we also take patient groups with us. We've also tried that, because the ultimate beneficiary of the technology is the patient.
Yes.
So we've been trying to tell them this is how we work. And through various health benefit packages of Ayushman Bharat or insurance agencies, when all the technologies that are cost effective find way into them, that is how the patients would also benefit. Yeah.
At the start of the conversation, you mentioned about how HTA as a concept is not really new, and many countries perhaps have already used this framework, so to speak, countries in the West. Are there any learnings that we have picked up from there? And is there sort of a reimagining of those guidelines or of that framework for our own internal challenges, which are very different?
So we have a number of successful bodies in the world. NICE UK is one, closer home is HITAP in Thailand, and then we have an agency in Canada, in Australia, and many other places who've been actually contributing a lot to policy, evidence-based decisions. So there has been a lot of learning from them, of course. We've been regularly organizing ISHTA, which is our international conference. We organize it almost annually now, wherein we have people from all these bodies also come and share their experiences with us. We are always in a learning state, but I think we have now reached a stage where we have kind of matured. We are no longer toddlers in this field. I think we have pretty good experience.
You're not the big daddies yet, but you're not babies.
Yeah, but I think we are pretty confident about the technologies. We're trying to define them. We've had lots of peer reviews. We've had lots of publications. I think now we are in a position wherein we can also lead in a health technology assessment, and we have already started talking to various countries on this aspect. And we've also modified HTA to suit our needs.
Okay.
For example, there are cases where it might take long to do a classical HTA.
Okay.
But then there we would do some kind of adaptive HTA, some kind of provisional HTA. We are also working into these aspects. We are also working on early HTAs where product is being developed. So we are trying to kind of do HTA the India way.
And be nimble.
And be very sure about the robustness of evidence.
Just out of curiosity, what would a traditional HTA timeframe be?
So it's we try to do it in 6 months, but you see the assessment would depend upon the kind of evidence we have. And the biggest problem today in the country is that not all this evidence is available. So that is why I said that we've been trying to talk to innovators to right in their stages of early development. They need to create evidence. They need to have some kind of feasibility studies, and they need to have some kind of third-party validation of their products, publish them. So we are working on that aspect also.
And that's where possibly what you mentioned about the interaction with the private sector at the time that they're developing comes into. I'll sort of try and stitch this conversation towards its end, ma'am, by sort of, when we look at healthcare today, we look at so much innovation, healthcare technology changing each day, every day. There's digital health, which is a big part of it. You've hinted at it partially, but does HDA also need to be agile with changing times and changing technology? How do you see that developing over the next couple of years?
See, digital technology, AI is going to play a big role in the future, and we all know the Secretary DHR has been taking a lot of interest in this particular aspect, and we've been trying to work on databases, which would help us test these technologies and, be available for the manufacturers, for the small scale industries, for the startups, everybody. So we are working on these databases. And we are hopeful that we'll be ready with them soon. We've already started working on them. And these would definitely be helpful in the later stage for HTA also. We've also tried to have an HTA database of all the studies that we have done. We are going to put it in the public domain. This would be available for everybody to see.
That would be of such great value, right? For emerging innovation, for innovators who are already looking at their products.
Yeah.
So that's all we could pack in on this episode of the ICMR Radio. Remember, there are a whole host of conversations on this YouTube channel that you can delve deeper into. With that, thank you once again.